Oh, so good, so good. Hey, welcome again to Athens Church. My name is Sean C. I get to be one of the pastors around here. I'm just curious, how many of you are familiar with the Be Real app? Raise your hand if you're familiar with Be Real. Yeah, so if you're not, the idea is the World Wide Web says this, that Be Real is a social media app designed to showcase life without filters. So you get the idea. They kind of said it in a little video there. You get a notification once a day, and then you got 2 minutes to take a picture, and it takes kind of a front and back picture. But apparently, about 75 million users on the Be Real platform right now. But honestly, I don't think that many of us are very surprised by the success of an app like this, right? Because we all have, first of all, we all know social media is fake, but we have this love-hate relationship with social media, don't we? I mean, there's a part of us that we like the fact that we can post a version of ourselves, which is our like edited highlights, right? So, you've got that one vacation picture that finally turned out right. If you crop all those people out, you put the right filter on it, vacation turned out okay, right? It's like your kid's award, maybe it's you with the right angle. This is the honest truth. I was somewhere recently and a group of ladies asked me to take their picture. And you know how you just randomly ask a stranger to take a picture or whatever. And so I'm taking the picture and she says, raise the camera. And I'm like, well, first of all, I'm not that tall. So you probably should ask somebody taller. So that's a mental no there. She said, get it above my nose. Get the camera above my nose. I'm thinking, your camera above your nose? Why don't you get your nose lower than the camera? Like, you're the one that asked me to take the picture, but nevertheless. So, well, we're always like editing, posing, right? You got to have just the right angle and, all the things, what goes into that. And then we can write whatever we want in our bio, and we can create a version of ourselves to look like whatever we want. Now, if you're new around here, you may not know this, but I don't normally do this. I don't like to draw a lot of attention to myself. I don't want this place to be all about me. But I did want to show you my Instagram page just to give you just an idea, of kind of who I really am and what my life is really like. So why don't we go ahead and show that? This is just, it's a few pics of me and some friends, and I don't like to post all the time. And granted, yes, I do have 1 million followers, that's right, but I only follow one person, I only follow Jesus. That's just who I am, and world's greatest pastor, for what it's worth, that actually wasn't voted on. That's, just been told to me by several people. But the 5-star dad part is, there's a fatherhood recruiting agency, and they have given me 5 stars. So that part is real. But we love this, don't we? We love the fact that we can create a version of ourselves online that is all of our highlights. It's all of our best parts. And at the same time, we hate social media, don't we? We hate it because we know how fake it is. And this is the crazy thing. It ignites this insecurity, this jealousy, all this stuff in us. Here's the crazy thing. We know when we post on social media, we are posting our edited highlights. But then when we look at someone else's stuff, we act like they're just posting their normal lives, right? Like, we're posting the best version of ourselves. They're posting their normal lives. So you see their vacation pictures and you're like, oh, great. Yeah, they went to Italy. Where'd we go? Panama City. I hate my family. We have the worst vacations ever. We don't ever do anything fun. And ladies, you've done this. I'm not going to ask you, to confess this today. You're sitting on your couch, you're scrolling, and you see her new boyfriend. And at that time, you look across the couch and you see your formerly in shape husband eating some Cheetos at the moment. And you're like, what have I done with my life? Like, how did I get here? I don't understand how we got to this moment again. Please don't confess that if that's really your situation. But social media, it puts us in the comparison trap. And if you don't know this, and by the way, if you're not normally a note taker, I'm gonna share a couple things, a passage, a couple ideas in a minute to write some stuff down. And so you might wanna get something to write with, but here's one of the first things you need to write down, and you need to know this and remember this and make this a part of your life, and that is comparison. Comparison is the thief of joy. Whatever you have, if you start comparing it to others, you will have less appreciation, less gratitude for the things that you currently have. It is the thief of joy, and it's just the way it works. But here's what's crazy. Y'all, can we just think and all be honest for a second? When it comes to social media, you know this. Nobody posts about the bad stuff in their life, right? Nobody posts, hey, gained 10 pounds this week, really excited, right? Nobody posts, hey, bought something I can't afford today, just went into debt for a washer and dryer, right? Nobody does that. Nobody posts, hey, my kids made the non-honor roll again, right? Even though that's everybody's kids, that's everybody's world. We are only seeing the edited parts of people's lives. So here's what I want us to consider today. Here's what I came to tell you today. We have inside a longing that we cannot turn off. It has no off switch. It is a longing to be accepted. Do you know this? Let's just all pause as a little bit older people for a second and look back at teenagers in our world, or maybe our teenage years. Do you know this? Teenagers, do you know what they are? Acceptance magnets. Acceptance magnets. They will go anywhere or do anything by the group that accepts them. And do you know what? Ultimately, that doesn't ever go away. We have a longing to be accepted deep inside of us. And here's the great news. That's one of the reasons God created the church. You see, the church is designed to be this place where we truly love each other. But it breaks my heart to say, the reality is many times we have settled for impressing others rather than being real with others. Now, you know this. You know the first part of this, and that is the American culture we live in, the world we live in. When you walk out those doors in just a few minutes, when you walk back out, you're walking into an impress me culture, right? They want to see, tell me about your education, tell me about your looks, tell me about your achievements, tell me about all the things that you've done in life. I'm going to measure you, grade you, judge you on all these things. But God created the church. You see, cultures change all the time. But God created a unique kind of culture. It's called the church, and the church is designed to be a be real with me place. That's how God has designed the church. That's what makes this space unlike anywhere else you go. And as you sit here at the start of a new semester, by the way, and you think about what your values and your priorities are going to be moving forward for this school year, I can't encourage you enough every seventh day to make sure that you show up in an environment that is radically different than the world. You know why? Your soul needs it. God designed your soul to need it. And that's one of the reasons we work so hard to make this happen every single week. So here's what I'm gonna do, all right? To show us all the tension and the difference between our real selves and the version we like to present to the world, I'm gonna read through a list of questions. Now I wanna tell you up front, I'm not trying to judge you. I don't want you to answer any of these questions out loud. I don't want you elbowing anybody beside you. I don't want you giving the side eye to anybody. Like none of that. Eyes focused straight ahead. And you don't have to answer any of these questions out loud. But here's what I want you to do. These are gonna make you uncomfortable, okay? But for a moment, I want us to sit in the discomfort that is our real life compared to the life we are tempted to show the world around us, okay? So just allow yourself to sit with these questions for just a minute. Question number one, how often do you drink alcohol? What do you drink? How long ago was it the last time you drank too much? More than you should have. How often do you smoke? How often do you vape? Do you smoke pot? How often? What do you watch on TV? What shows do you regularly watch? How often do you watch TV? When's the last time you looked at pornography? What role does pornography play in your life? I don't know about you, but every Sunday morning, I get a screen time report that shows up on my phone. What does your screen time report say about your phone usage? How often are you on social media? What apps do you use? Like not just your opinion, not just your thoughts. What does your phone say about which apps and how often you actually use? Changing categories for a second. What do you normally eat? What do you actually eat regularly? What do you drink? How often do you exercise? How about a couple of spiritual questions? How often do you actually read scripture? How often do you pray? How often do you pray with your spouse? How often do you pray with your kids? Here's a real one. What do you spend your money on? If we opened your bank account right now, what would it say about your spending habits? We're halfway, through the year. What would it say about your spending habits this year? What about generosity? How much money do you give away to people in need or to your church? What do you normally do before you go to bed? What's your normal rhythm or routine? What do you do when you first wake up? How much do you really work? Like when you're at work, how much are you really focused on work versus how much are you kind of messing around on the side? How much do you study? How much do you really study? When's the last time you erupted in anger or did something out of an emotionally unhealthy place? When's the last time you were dishonest or deceptive? When's the last time you did something unethical? Now, the truth is, we could continue those questions for the next hour. None of us wants to answer those questions out loud. And the reason is because we're horrified of what people would think about us if they knew the real answers to all those things. But we know this, don't we? Can we just be honest with ourselves for a second? Just for yourself. You don't have to tell anybody else right now. Can you be honest with yourself? The answers to those questions paint a picture of who I really am and who you really are. I mean, whatever you do with your money, whatever you do with your morality, whatever you do with your time, that defines who you really are. This is how I say it. Do you want to know the real me? The real me is who I am when no one is watching. If you want to know the real me, then you find out who I am when no one is watching. Now, this is incredibly clear, okay? One thing I like to make clear often is what I'm not saying. So let me make sure you understand what I'm not saying. I am not saying everyone needs to know the answers to all those questions. I'm not saying you need to air your dirty laundry to everybody all the time. So here is what I am saying. You ready for this? If you want meaningful relationships, if you want deep, rich, authentic relationships, by the way, which you do, then somebody needs to know the real you. Somebody needs to know the real you. And here's one of the main things I want you to take away from today. If you want to follow Jesus, if that's an interest to you, and I know it is, or you wouldn't have taken your time to come here today, you need to know that authenticity is an essential part of following Jesus. Authenticity is an essential part of following Jesus. Now, what I want us to do is I want us to look at a couple of really powerful verses from the New Testament. Now, if you don't know this, the Bible, if you open up the Bible, it's divided into two parts, Old Testament, New Testament, Hebrew scriptures, Greek scriptures. And as you get into the New Testament, you start talking about Jesus. And Jesus eventually comes onto the scene. He lives, he dies, he rises from the grave. And then there are some kind of messengers, if you will, called apostles. And they send out the message of Jesus to the known world. And one of the ways they do that is they write letters. One of the best letters in the New Testament about following Jesus is called Ephesians. And Ephesians is 6 chapters. We're going to do at some point a series on the whole book of Ephesians. But today, I want us just to look at 4 verses. Ephesians is broken up into 2 parts. The first half of the book is all about when you put your trust in Jesus, who you are, your identity, understanding who you are. The second half of the book is all about how do you live and what do you do. So we're gonna pull a couple of verses out of the second half of the book, Ephesians chapter 4, if you have your Bible or if you got a Bible app or whatever, if you wanna write these verses down and go back and look these up, but we'll put them up on the screen. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 21 is where we're gonna start. Since you heard about Jesus and have learned the truth that comes from him, throw off your old sinful nature and your former way of life, which is corrupted by lust and deception. Instead, let the Spirit renew your thoughts and attitudes. Put on your new nature, created to be like God, truly righteous and holy. And here's the big idea I want you to take away. So stop telling lies. Let us tell our neighbors the truth, for we're all parts of the same body. I'm gonna read that part of the verse again. Stop telling lies. Let's tell our neighbors the truth, for we're all part of the same body. So let me tell you very simply what the Apostle Paul is saying right here. He's saying when you put your trust in Jesus, when you trust him as your Savior, you're invited into a new group, a new community, a new group of people. Sometimes he calls this the church. Sometimes he calls this the body of Christ. Sometimes he calls it the family of God. And he says, in this family, in this new family that you're part of, there's some new rules about how we handle our relationships. We don't let the world out there dictate how we handle our relationships. And here's the foundation of how we handle our relationships. We don't lie. We don't act like someone we're not. We just tell the truth. Now, in light of that, I want to make a little bit of a confession. As a representative of churches, as a representative of Christians, as a pastor, I want to tell you, I think in this area, Christians have not developed a really great reputation. I think we have had the tendency to focus on our external behavior. And by the way, anytime you focus purely on externals, people are gonna learn to measure up to that externals and they'll ignore all the internals. And I think we have focused on our external behavior, honestly, in an attempt to impress other Christians. And I think we've had a tendency to look down on all the other people of the world who are doing sinful things, right? We're self-righteous. We're not like that. And we have a tendency to look down on other people like that. And I think that has led the church to being, honestly, a highly inauthentic place. And that is heartbreaking. I want to get you to just vote on this or join on this one. How many of you, and I know this is true for a bunch of you, how many of you have ever, not you, okay, let's just say you know someone who's done this. You've been driving to church, right? You know someone who's driving to church, and on the way, they are mad as a hornet. I mean, they are all over each other, finger pointing, hollering, whatever's going on. They get out at the church, open the door, step outside, and they're like, hey, good to see y'all. How are you doing? We're doing great. How many of you know someone who's ever had an experience like that, right? Not you, but like yeah, okay, good. Yeah. Listen, I know a family. This is the honest truth, okay? They lived in a small town and they didn't want the people at their church to know that they like to drink beer. So they would drive, honest truth, 30 minutes to another town and order beer with their dinner and then drive back and 30 minutes back because they didn't want the Christians in their town to know that they were drinking. I'm like, oh my goodness, why do we do this? Why are we so inclined? And you know what word that we've earned? You know the word that we've heard? Of course you know. You've heard it a million times. If you ask people to describe Christians, to describe churches, this is one of the first words that you're gonna hear all the time, hypocrites, right? You know what a hypocrite is? A hypocrite is somebody who talks the talk but doesn't walk the walk. They talk about all the religious, righteous things, but then they don't have a tendency to live it out. And I'm embarrassed to say, I think we have earned that reputation. And so can I say to you today, specifically those of you that wouldn't call yourself a Christian, and honestly, this is one of the reasons you don't want to call yourself a Christian, but to those of you that would identify that way, can I just tell you I'm sorry? Can I just tell you I'm sorry that we've been so inclined to point fingers at everybody else rather than doing what Jesus did? You know what Jesus told believers to do? To spend your energy taking the log out of your own eye before you start worrying about the speck in someone else's eye. That's what Jesus said. You know what you should give your best energy to? Get that big log out of your eye. That's gonna take a long time, and then maybe later you'll have a little bit of energy to help other people get the speck out of their own eye. I just wanna say I'm sorry. And if you wouldn't call yourself a follower of Jesus, I just wanna say thank you for giving us another chance today. And I hope that through this, you're able to see how God really wants us to live together, even though many of us as Christians maybe didn't model that for you very well. Now, let me tell you who I think does do a great job at this. And this is a little bit embarrassing to me that I think they do such a better job than the local church. I think one of the best experiences I've ever seen at Authenticity is in my experience at Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, I don't know how much you know about AA, but I actually love to go to AA meetings. And it freaks some people out when they see me walking in, by the way, from time to time. And I don't go to AA because I struggle with drinking. I go because it's the most authentic environment I've ever been in my life. And so sometimes I just take a lunch hour and I just go to an AA meeting and I walk in and I don't say a word. I'm not there to mess with anybody. You know what I'm there to do? I'm there to soak up the authenticity and remind me this is actually how Christians should interact together. You know that AA, you know what their goal is? They have one goal. Their goal, help people stay sober today. That's it. They say, we don't have a political opinion. We don't have an opinion on anything. Don't use our name for anything. Here's what we want to do. Help people stay sober today. Everything we do is aimed at that. So when life is hard, well, they call their sponsor and ask for help. When they're struggling, they go to a meeting and tell people that they're having a hard time. You know why? I wrote this in my notes, and some of you need to write this down. Because they would rather be better than look better. They would rather be better than look better. And they've learned they will never get there by faking it. So in light of that, some of you have heard of the book called The Big Book, the AA Big Book. I want to read you a paragraph out of the Big Book, and I want you to understand the kind of culture that they've created, because I actually think the church could learn a lot from this group of people. Here's what it says. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Look at this. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves, not even anybody else, themselves. There are such unfortunates. They're not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They're naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living, which, again, I hope you will write this phrase down, demands rigorous honesty. Demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. Now, there are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. You know what the Big Book says? It says if you want to stop alcohol from ruining your life, then you've got to stop telling lies and tell the truth. Do you know what the New Testament says? If you want deep, authentic, meaningful relationships, then you've got to stop telling lies and tell the truth. Now, again, let me just say very clearly what I'm not saying. I'm not saying you need to tell everybody everything. You don't need to hop on social media today and go on your Facebook thing and just air all your dirty laundry. That's not the goal. Actually, step 5 of the 12 steps. If you never read the 12 steps, like hop online and read the 12 steps sometimes. They're actually incredible. But step 5 says a version of this, that we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. So what am I saying? I'm saying if you want authentic relationships, you need to admit to God, to yourself, and to another individual the exact nature of your struggles, of your wrongs, of the areas where you can't seem to get it right. That's how people begin to get to know you. Now, you may not know this, but from the very beginning, before this church ever had its first service, we decided that the primary destination for every individual would not be just gathering on Sundays, but rather would be gathering in people's homes in small groups. And we call these community groups. We call them community groups because they're groups where we want people to share authentic community. And we have groups for men, groups for women, groups for married couples, groups for college students. We have all kinds of groups, more than you could possibly imagine. And to be in one of our groups, you don't have to be a super Christian. You don't have to know all the Bible. You literally just have to do 2 things. If you can just do 2 things, then you can have a powerful experience in small groups at Athens Church. And those 2 things are show up and be real. Show up and be real. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna ask all of you, if you don't mind, just to say this out loud with me. On the count of 3, we're just gonna say show up and be real, right? Can we try that all together on the count of 3? 1, 2, 3, show up and be real. That's right. Some of you weren't sure if you could really speak out loud, if you're gonna be the only one to do it. We're all gonna do it this time, okay? Ready? On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, show up and be real. I would tell you this. If you don't plan to make community a priority in your life, and if you're not willing to show up and really be real with some other people, then I would actually encourage you not to join a group. But on the other hand, if you want some people that really know you, and some people that begin to love you, and some people that begin to help you follow Jesus and help you become the best version of yourself, I can't encourage you enough to join a group and connect with some people. Now, there's a group of us in this church, and by the way, I'm in a community group every Wednesday night. My wife and I, we've been doing this before the church began. We're going to do it after they fire us and kick us out of here. Like we're not giving up on community. It's who we are and what we're all about. There's some of you did this at one point in time, but maybe you didn't have a great experience, or maybe some priorities, challenges in your life that maybe, kind of made you step away or whatever. Can I encourage you, this is the season to re-engage. Today at 1:00, we're gonna give you the one opportunity this semester to join one of these small groups. And Josh will give you the details on how to do all that, but it's honestly not very complicated at all. You go to our website and click join a group, and you will be able to figure all that out. But I just wanna tell you this before you even make up your mind whether or not you're gonna do it. I have a dream for the small groups at Athens Church. And if you don't know, more people gather in circles, in homes, in small groups throughout this city during the week than gather here on Sundays. This is what a big deal this is for us. And I have a dream for those groups. And I'll tell you very clearly what my dream is. My dream is that our groups would look more like AA and less like Sunday school. That there would be more confessing and less impressing. And I just want to say to those of you that are actually in a group, can I give you an invitation? Can I give you a thought to consider? Can I speak to the ladies just for 1 second? If you're a lady in a small group at Athens Church, would you consider showing up at one of your next small groups not looking your best? Your sweats and a hat, not impressing anybody, and saying, look, I'm just bringing the real version of me today. Because you know this, you have enough environments that feel like they're judging you physically all the time. You need a place where you can come and be real. Guys, eventually, we gotta make it past the sports conversation into the real conversation, right? Like eventually, I'm all in, Braves, dogs, all of it. Let's get that out of the way, that matters. But then we gotta talk about what's really going on. We gotta talk about what's really happening in our marriages, what's really happening with our kids, what's really happening in the battles that we're facing in life. And that's what community was designed to be. So, I want you to just imagine with me just for a second, if you don't mind. We're about to wrap things up here in just a second. Imagine there really is a God. And honestly, that's a hard concept to get your mind around, right? A God you can't see, you can't hear, you can't touch. Imagine there really is a God. And imagine he created humanity. And imagine humanity rebelled against God. But God loved humanity so much that he has been coming after us, trying to reunite with us ever since. And imagine he sent his son. And his son died a death that he didn't deserve. He died a death that I deserved and a death that you deserved. 3 days later, he rose from the grave and he ascended into heaven. And imagine he said to the small group of followers right there at the beginning, I want you to take this message of grace, this reconciliation message, and I want you to share it with the whole world. I want every individual on the planet to know that I love them and I want to be in relationship with them. So he gives this message of reconciliation to the world. And then imagine that the church who has that message said, no, we're just going to be a self-righteous version of ourselves. We're just gonna look down on all those, screwed up people in the world that keep doing everything wrong. We're just gonna stay focused on ourselves and impress each other with all of our righteousness. Let me ask you a question. How likely would that group be to change the world? No chance. You know what would happen? They would quickly become irrelevant. And if you ask the tens of thousands of people that woke up in this city today and aren't going to church anywhere, what they think about the church, they think it's irrelevant to their daily lives. And that breaks my heart. But just imagine one other scenario with me just for a second. Imagine there's a God. He made us. We rebelled against him. He loved us. He sent his son. He gave us this message of reconciliation. And imagine the church saying, we're not gonna focus on impressing everybody anymore. Instead, we're gonna throw open our arms to this city and say, come in just as you are. We're not gonna spend our energy changing you. Matter of fact, we're gonna spend all of our energy getting the log out of our own eye. And we're not driving to another town to drink a beer, to act like someone we're not. We're not driving to small group and our marriage is struggling and we go in and act like everything is great. No, we're not living that kind of life. We're going to be real. And we're gonna invite you to come in just as you are. And we'll trust that God can change you in his way. And trust me, the changes that he does in his life are for your good. The changes he does in your life are for your good. Because he loves you so much, he doesn't want those things to destroy you. But we're honestly gonna spend most of our energies just focused on letting him change us. We'll let him change you in your way and in your time. You know what would happen if a church did that? The gates of hell couldn't stop that church. And I actually believe many of you have experienced this. Maybe, I hope most of you have experienced this. I believe this is one of the things this church does the best. I think one of the best things we do is leave our mask at the door and walk in and present a real version of ourselves. But it's hard because every week we go back out into the culture and they go, impress me, impress me, impress me. You know, show me how great you are. Post how great you are. Post only your edited highlights. And that's why we got to keep coming back to this environment. We need to keep coming back to a small group of people where we can just be real and be ourselves. You know, people ask all the time, Sean, why in the world is Athens Church spending millions of dollars to create a location in Beechwood? I don't know if you know this, but we've got a location that we're putting in the Beechwood Shopping Center right now. Construction has already started. We're deep into the process. Hopefully this time next year, that will be wide open. But why in the world would you do that? You know why? Let me tell you why. Because though there are thousands of people here today, there are tens of thousands of people who woke up in this city and they have no idea that God is real, that he loves them, that he wants to be a part of their lives, and that they can find an authentic space where they can bring all their hurt and all their pain, and God will do something powerful in their lives. That's what this church is all about. And so the way that we live that out is in community. The way we live that out is sharing our lives with one another. And so today's the day. Today's the opportunity for us to connect with some other people, to say, I'm gonna clear off my schedule. I'm gonna make room one night a week to show up and connect my life with some other people. And yes, let me just tell you, you're gonna meet them and you're gonna walk in and they're all gonna be very weird, all right? I'm telling you that right now. They're gonna be nerds, they're gonna be dorks, they're gonna be really odd. For what it's worth, they're thinking the same thing about you when you walk in, okay? So, but you're gonna get past that. And you're gonna come to find out these weirdos are your friends. And they're people that like you. And they're people that pray for you. They're people that accept you and encourage you to be all that God has for you. So would you be willing to just show up? Would you be willing to be real? See what God could do? You have no clue what could happen in this next window of your life if you give God a chance to do that. So I'd love to just pray for you if you can. Will you mind just bow your head and close your eyes just for a second? You know, it became really clear to me as I was kind of thinking and praying about this message today that one of the big things that stands in the way of us being authentic with others is that honestly, we're not very authentic with God because we're scared that if we were honest with God and told him our real thoughts and real feelings and real fears and he saw the real us, that somehow he would reject us. But I just want to tell you, nothing is further from the truth. You have a God who knows you and who gave his life for you. He knew everything you were ever going to do wrong before you ever did the first thing. He knows what you're going to do wrong tomorrow, and he sent his son anyway. And for some of you, step one is just begin a relationship with God through Jesus. And it's so easy. If you want a relationship with God, if you want to experience his life inside you, just say to him right now in the quietness of your heart to say, God, I know I'm sinful. I know there's no way I'll ever make myself righteous before you. I can't ever do enough rights to correct all my wrongs. And tell him thank you for sending Jesus to die the death that you should have died, to pay the price that you should have paid. And just say, God, I want to right now give you all my sin. And I just want to ask that you will take the life of Jesus and put it inside me and make him my Savior, make him leader of my life, and direct my steps, God. And God, I just pray that as people are praying this right now to you, thank you for the mercy of Jesus. Thank you that you say yes every time. And God, I pray that you would lead them to the place where they could be fully vulnerable, fully authentic with you, with themselves, and with another individual. And I pray that you would help us connect into authentic environments. So thank you for Jesus. God, thank you for the imperfect, flawed church, but thank you for the hope that the church has. Thank you for this church and this city. We love you so much. We pray it in Jesus' amazing name.